Hey everyone. I'm the one who gets to talk about blockchain, so how lucky am I? But anyway, I did come from the Post, where I spent the past 3 years, so it was a very difficult place to leave. But I start with that because what we're doing and what I aim to focus on at Po.et is very aligned with the ideation and ideologies that I focus on at the Post. So I work on the business side of media. Prior to the Post, I was at the Huffington Post and Time Inc. and others with a strong focus on how to be directive. I think we constantly are running uphill in the business of media, whether that's ad blocking, fraud, viewability, right? A lot of negative connotations associated with it. And I think that's because we're extremely reactive as a business, right? We're trying to see what the platforms will do. We're trying to see what advertisers are asking for. Instead of being more directive, right? And investing in things like technology and other efforts that help clients, consumers, readers get from A to B faster. So I took that here, and I always start with Paul Ford's article, who's a friend, but this came out like 2 days after I decided to go to Po.et. So, and the title is Bitcoin is Ridiculous and Blockchain is Dangerous. And Paul writes amazing articles around technology, and I think that it's extremely important for a lot of perceptions like this to come out, because you have a lot of arguments today, right? You have like the rowdy and the dowdy when it comes to blockchain. People that say blockchain is going to change the world. If you're not on board, you don't know what's going on. And then there's people that are like, I can't stand this. I want nothing to do with this. And I think that it's important to also understand that people think that an argument is to separate, right, Bitcoin and currencies and blockchain. And say one is different than the other. But the idea of this like cultural shift and what's happening with the economics, it's important to realize that they actually do go hand in hand. And there is a question that many companies should ask themselves, which is like, why use the blockchain versus using a database? And are people like the Long Island Iced Tea Company just using blockchain to increase stock price? And I think you're seeing a lot of that right now. And unfortunately, it puts a damper on all the exciting things that are happening here. But within Paul's article, he said, what if the most important thing the blockchain offers is a way to really build culture? And that, I think, is extremely important in this space, right? Blockchain is coming. It's an exciting technology, as you know, the cryptocurrency market as well. It's been around for 9 years now, so no one could say that they're an expert on blockchain and has worked in it for a decade, because no one has, right? It's only been 9 years. But I think what's extremely important is for us to be prepared, especially in media. That's why, again, I'm at Po.et and what we're focusing on, right? I don't think new technologies will do old technologies better than those old technologies, but that's why they're old, right? In 1993, when the internet was coming and people would say, but I rather use the fax machine, it is better at communicating messages, that was true. But not investing in the internet and being prepared for the economic shift that it brought every single pocket of industry wasn't the best idea for many businesses that no longer exist here. So that's where I think blockchain is extremely interesting, right? If we could start building on protocols, right, and this next layer of internet, focusing on things particularly to media that are extremely important, then what we're able to do at Po.et and other companies in this vein are able to work with media companies, advertisers, and others in the space to help them when they're ready to start embracing this technology. So I always like to listen, and I was convinced, right, and similar to my previous jobs, that everyone in media was saying, the platforms are eating our business, the bundling models are gonna overbundle, advertising is struggling, so I said, okay, this is gonna solve it. And then, of course, everyone is like, Po.et is a solution in search of a problem, right? And I think that many great ideas start that way. You know, I think like a solution in search of a problem actually does eventually create a solution. And especially within media, there's like two things that are extremely important to realize is that attribution in media is a real problem, right? When it comes to being able to identify news and information and be able to store it and archive in an immutable ledger, right? Early days of the internet, the idea was that your information and your storage cannot be impacted by any outside source. And now with centralization and cloud computing, like there are data centers and there are pieces of information that if they did go away, you would lose that, right? So the idea of attribution and how that works is important. And then being able to take that data and understand what the value of media should be, right? Like I, for one, believe that media is extremely underpriced. However, it's very hard for us to really figure out what that is. There's no free agency market like in sports to be able to dictate how much content and how much the value of an effort of work should cost. And what if blockchain could be a solution to help for that? So there's kind of three questions that at Po.et we look to answer, right? Like who owns digital media? Who owns the digital media assets? How do you license and syndicate it, right? Like how do you get your content out there in an intelligent way so that it can't be copied, so that it can't be stolen? When I say content, I mean ideas, right? It's not just articles or videos or images, but it's when you press save on PowerPoint or Photoshop. How do you enable that art? And what is the origin of this asset, right? Like, do you want to get to the source, especially as it pertains to this conversation? How do you source, how do you push out bad actors, and how do you leverage, a decentralized community to help find the truth? So attribution is a product that we're focusing on now. So to be clear, Po.et is an open source protocol. So it's a nonprofit business. We have to date, we just hired, but we have about 10 engineers in the blockchain stack. So if you think there's probably 1,000 engineers that work in blockchain around the world, and every single company is jumping on them with their 1 or 2 years of experience. So that's where we see a huge value in what we're going to be doing here when it comes to media companies and publishers, is that we're focusing on this and then trying to bring it to the masses to be able to learn and evolve from. So today there's certain companies that are working with us that are just timestamping and putting metadata ownership of their content on their site. So whenever they press publish, whenever they press save, we scrape the metadata, we timestamp it, and it's stored on the block. It's immutable, it's there, it cannot be changed. And the value of that is that it's really the future of what the archive looks like. Here you're able to edit, you're able to send licenses. So say if the New York Times has a partnership with Medium and Hearst, right now they're probably signing contracts and deals and taking a huge leap of faith that the rules will be followed. This sort of technology allows you to say, well, if A doesn't equal B, then it will not work. And then we're building this. I'm extremely ambitious to say we're building the future of the internet, but I really believe that we're building something that is going to help make the internet better, especially in the media space. And especially when it understands what could be built on top of this, right? So being an open source protocol, we are building tools that are helping different pockets of business, leveraging blockchain for storage and immutability, but also for discovery. Really figuring out, what do these tokens mean, right? When people are buying cryptocurrency assets, how can you be a subscriber to multiple publications, right, without having to go to each one? And how do we recognize those users throughout their entire journey? And that's something that, again, blockchain is bringing value to here. And another thing that I think is important, and it's a big theme here, is the idea of content being discovered. And I love the sentiments lately that we can't really value content based on visits, UVs, PVs, because that kind of propagates a bad business and advertising economy, that we're really looking at the wrong things when we should be focused on others. And I think that the word discovery is a clear indicator of that, right? When we think of discovery, we think about how to get a piece of information or content in front of the most people possible, because we feel that the reward is to get that group of people back consuming our content. And I think that discovery is a bigger issue, like thinking outside of our bubble and circles. People have ideas. Screenwriters are creating like movie scripts that they want to syndicate and share around, but are scared that if someone sees it, they will copy it, right? And that sort of idea of people creating ideas and creating information keeps them from putting that art and that information out there. So what we're looking to do with Discovery 2 is giving people faith and opportunity to know that they could put their work out there and then be able to know that it's safe, right? And there's an origin of truth. So we have different applications that allow other publishers to do this. And we're also building out these marketplaces. So the other value of blockchain and what's really happening here is the decentralization of having many different players come in and be able to weigh in on a source of information. So building reputation systems, building governance, but really being able to take advantage of what all these things could do. And again, not saying that blockchain today is the solution for all. But again, going full circle, similar to internet in '93, if we're focusing on these things and preparing for them and building on top of them, then these code libraries and opportunities will be available for everyone in this room to be ready, right, when this wave comes and react accordingly to help better your business, better your community, and better the overall media ecosystem. So with that, what's next? And I will say blockchain in media. So thank you.